Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Malgorzata Bala. I come from Jagiellonian University Medical College in Kraków, Poland, and I would like to warmly welcome everybody, all our panelists and speakers, and all the participants. This is the first seminar, in fact, although it's not the first meeting or not the first conference, but this year we're doing this as a seminar or workshop. And the main theme is advancing evidence-based research, trends and insights. The seminar is planned for 2 days. Today is an introductory session regarding what is evidence-based research and on the developments during the cost action EVBRES. And tomorrow the day is dedicated for going further to other fields to see where evidence-based research fits there. Please let me welcome our first speaker and chair of EVBRES Cost Action and chair of Evidence-Based Research Network, Professor Hans Lund, who will be speaking about the introduction to EBR concept for newcomers. Please, Hans.
Thank you very much, Malgorzata, and welcome all of you. I'm going here to share with you something about what is this concept of evidence-based research. So one way to do that is, can you imagine you are having such a great idea for a new scientific study? Here's an example. He had a very good idea dealing with the problem of when you are having anesthesia, you will have it's very painful when you are giving the anesthesia. So maybe a local injection with lidocaine could be helpful. So he was making this chain of argument in his background, leading to the purpose you can see here on the right side, was to assess the efficacy of lidocaine on diminished pain associated with the injection of propofol anesthesia. And the results was very nice. Lidocaine significantly reduced propofol injection pain more than placebo, and it was significant. It was in more than 68% of the cases. However, the study was redundant, unnecessary. It was actually, together with 86 other similar studies, no new knowledge was obtained. And that is something we could say based upon a systematic review that was published in 2000, where they actually have identified a number of studies evaluating this exactly question, and they concluded that this is good to use lidocaine. But you would say, hey, strange, El-Radaide was actually citing this systematic review by Picard and Tramet, but the way he did it was simply referring to this systematic review by saying that the incidence of pain on injection of propofol has been reported to be 70%. And that's all he used it for. He did not mention or use the systematic review in any other way. For example, to stop the author from performing an unnecessary study. Then in 2014, 14 years later, the first systematic review, some of the authors together with someone else updated the systematic review in order to figure out what has been published in this area. So here you can see there is actually up to 56 studies up to 2000 that was included in the systematic review in 2000. That one that Radaide actually was citing when he was publishing after 2000. And there was more around 136 new studies were published. Well, you could argue that maybe 49 of those studies were clinical relevant. They were maybe dealing with would it also work on children, or what the long-term effect and so forth. But 87 studies were actually not necessary. They were not contributing to any new knowledge. And El Radar-ID study from 2007 was one of these, even though that the author was familiar with the 2000 review. Habra, the first author of the second systematic review, stated, for example, that there are numerous examples where systematic reviews, if performed in a timely manner, could have provided evidence of the effectiveness of an intervention and thus prevented redundant research. So there is also evidence that knowledge from systematic review are underused to inform future research. Let me share some examples of systematic review we have in the EBR-Network, and EVBRES have tried really to figure out what's going on here. We have, for example, a study published in 2022 where we're looking at how many are actually using a systematic review to inform the justification of their study. And you can see here that 42% were doing that in one or another way. In other words, 58% were not using systematic review to figure out if there was a research gap or an evidence gap in this area. When it comes to informing the design of the study, using what is already known and what might be necessary, for example, what kind of outcome measure would be needed to look at, what kind of comparison, what time should it be measured, and so forth. Only 17% were using that in another systematic review, also published in 2022. So 83% were not using systematic review to inform the design of their new study. And finally, we also published a study where we looked at the ability or whether authors of original studies actually used the knowledge from systematic review to place their own results in the context of the existing evidence, not just some of the study, but all the studies dealing with the same question. And that was only 31%, meaning that 69% were not using systematic reviews to inform their design. This is just an example of research on research showing that we may have a problem. So the question is really how to deal with that. Should we just don't care, or is it very important? Thus, we have actually established an international network, the Evidence-Based Research Network, and you can see here the link to our website, and please use that. And we are trying to figure out how we could avoid redundant research, because it is in some cases dangerous to the patients. It's using resources that should be maybe used for better research and other research questions. So it's really a problem that we need to deal with. The way we define this way to deal with the problem of redundant and unnecessary studies is actually the concept of evidence-based research, which we define as the use of prior research in a systematic and transparent way to inform a new study, so that the new study is answering questions that matter in a valid, efficient, and accessible manner. We can also put it in another way. You can see that when you are planning a new study, you will maybe have a number of studies that are supporting that this idea you have is very good. We could call it underpinning research. It could be a mechanistic study or some preliminary case reports or something like that. You will, of course, also do the study because you have the competences, you have maybe the means and the resources and the machinery to do the studies. And that's all very good arguments. What we actually are promoting is that we should use a systematic approach and use the synthesis of earlier similar studies, just like the one with lidocaine and propofol, and figure out what do we already know about the study. We should also have a synthesis of the end users, for example, the patients or the clinicians, and say, what is the synthesis of their perspectives or concerns or experiences or values or preferences, and try to figure that out when we are arguing or justifying for a new study, when we are designing a new study, and when we are placing new results in the context. I will not go into detail here, but I will just show you that what we are aiming for is actually, before you're doing the study, you should try to find a systematic review or similar systematic approaches in order to justify your study. You should also systematically obtain the end users' perspectives or experiences or concerns, and those two together, you can argue whether the research question is justified. Is there really a research gap here? Is there something we need to look further into? And if you can't justify it, you will answer no, and you have to go back and reformulate your question, or maybe find a completely other question, maybe within the same patient group. If you are answering yes, you should use the knowledge you have obtained from the systematic reviews, both about earlier similar studies or the end users, and use that to inform the design. So your design is really evidence-based, so to speak. Then you can conduct the study. And then you could use the systematic review you have used to justify and see if your study actually have contributed, have that changed the existing knowledge. What about the important issues for regarding to the end users and the patient and stuff like that? What's actually they are saying, so you can interpret the new results in a very evidence-based way and in a very comprehensive way. So you formulating the implications for practice and the implications for further research is really taking into consideration everything there is. And so if we look back at the example, actually in the chain of arguments in the background, the author of this example I mentioned earlier, the authors should have used the systematic review from 2000, say, I have this idea here, what should I do or not do? And then you could maybe say, okay, I can see that we already know 56 studies have already looked into that. So we do have a problem here. They did so, but the systematic review should have been used to justify design and not just support a statement in the argumentation. And even it should be used to placing the results in context of existing evidence. So this is, in principle, actually what we mean when we are talking about evidence-based research. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hans, for such a fantastic summary of evidence-based research concept, which is quite complicated, and you made it seem so clear. So since we have many participants who were not participating in EVBRES cost action, we would like to show what was the EVBRES cost action about, and I would like to welcome our co-chair of the cost action, Klara Brunnhuber, to talk about the structure and accomplishment of EVBRES. Yes, please, Klara. Oh, sorry. So questions, yeah, sorry to interrupt. So questions we'll keep till the end, and please add the questions to the chat so we can have a discussion at the end. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just share the slides here with some help. Okay. I'll be honest. Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Malgorzata, and welcome everyone once again. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be part of this fantastic group and to be having the opportunity to present to you about our EBR-Network cost action, EVBRES, that just recently, earlier this year, came to an end after 4.5 years. And so I will present to you its structure and accomplishments, starting out with our launch event back in 2018, on the 17th of October. A group came together to officially kick off the EVBRES cost action. And as you can see, it was a huge group back then, with over 40 countries that participated globally in this right from the very start, and which was really unheard of, more or less, by the cost action. They were really impressed that this particular aspect, the issue of evidence-based research, struck such a chord in so many European and also other countries all around the world. You can read here our aim back then to encourage researchers and other stakeholders to use an EBR approach while carrying out and supporting clinical research, and thus avoiding redundant research. So this was clearly resonating with so many others. You can see here our 32 full members from all around Europe. 16 of those, the so-called cost inclusiveness target countries, where research is particularly promoted by the EU, and also 4 near neighboring countries, including such countries that are a lot in the headlines nowadays, such as Russia, Lebanon, Palestine, and also 5 international partner countries with Canada, the US, India, Australia, and South Africa. So we were a very diverse group, meeting in Brussels for the first time, and then many times afterwards, in setting ourselves up in 4 working groups. You can see here the 4 themes of the working groups. The first one dedicated to the dissemination and implementation of the issue, awareness raising and formulating the implications for stakeholders. The second one was dedicated to investigating and then creating teaching materials about the EBR methods, providing training, providing training schools, and developing a handbook on how to conduct evidence-based research. The third one dedicated to a particular aspect that is linked to evidence-based research, which is around the efficiency of undertaking systematic reviews themselves. Because if you make it too difficult to conduct transparent and systematic evidence synthesis, then nobody would be able to do those before they even start their research study. So a lot of effort goes into this. How can this be automated? There was a lot of interest in this working group. I think it was our largest one. And a lot of work and related collaborations have come out of it. And then the fourth one was dedicated to meta-research on EBR implementation, building agreement on how to evaluate, and then working towards an understanding of how to monitor. You can see here the structure of our the EVBRES in terms of its management. In the middle, you see the core team that included our chair, vice chair, a grant holder manager, so the representative of our grant holder institution, which was HVL here in Bergen, the program management group, the science communication manager, and of course representatives from all 4 working groups. We also had an additional grants committee because the cost action has the opportunity to give out grants to members to undertake short-term scientific missions and also to go on conferences promoting the approach. And we had also advisors and consultants to go back to in case there were expert input. The expert input was needed. So, our EBRES in numbers. You can see those 32 full member countries at kickoff, the 4 working groups, the 15 activity groups. Overall, we had 65 active EBRES participants and received a fairly large budget, as you can see, from cost, even though it was, of course, much smaller in the end than what we would have liked to spend. Because, of course, EBRES was one of those that was affected by the global pandemic. So with its 2 main objectives of capacity building and collaboration, both of those came to a significant reduction on, and in some cases, halt in view of COVID-19, and that had clearly also an impact on travel and other expenses. So there were several grant periods where we could not spend much of the allocated funding at all. We had 24 core group and action meetings, 24 short-term scientific missions and conference grants, developed a handbook, conducted 7 EBR training schools with nearly 600 training school registrants. We held 3 online EBR conferences, and all the work resulted in 28 scientific publications over those 4.5 years. Through our media, social media, and other outreach, we reached many thousands, as you can see here, at least 21,000 people worldwide. So it has been a real campaign to raise awareness of this issue and also start working on some of the solutions to it. I'll pick up some of the achievements now that were already now mentioned. One would be the EBR conferences. So you can just see here, immediately with our first conference, we reached so many people all around the world, from 6 continents. It was just fantastic to see all this engagement. Through our EBR conferences, we've had wonderful speakers lined up for our plenaries. You see the top row, they are all participants and members of EBRES, but about 2/3 of them are just people who are really interested in this area and have done considerable research that was linked. And, you know, you see some pretty big names up there. I wanted to also showcase our fantastic publications, some of them in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology, already mentioned some of them by Hans. We had what is evidence-based research? Why is it important? How about using an evidence-based research approach before a new study is conducted? And then looking at to place study results into context and just highlighting many of the issues there, such as the heterogeneity in citation and the resource used during systematic review production. Some other key publications highlighting the problem that systematic reviews are rarely used to contextualize new results, as we heard earlier, or indeed that the justification of research using systematic reviews is inconsistent in clinical health science. So please check these out, and I guess that we will be sharing the slides later, so you will have all these available. They are also listed on our website and in the resources tab, and all are open access thanks to cost funding. So really a huge wealth of information there at your fingertips. Other achievements and accomplishments included 6 major projects that resulted from EBRES. You can see here some of the participant countries. So it really came to close collaboration between EU and other international countries, resulting in some of them really considerable research projects that are very much taking the work forward. And there was also other impact, of course. We have seen that funders are starting to follow the evidence-based research principles. You can see that, for example, on the EVBR website, which is a network of funders. We've already talked about publications, but of course also there were translations created of these 2016 seminal BMJ articles towards evidence-based research by Ian Chalmers. And the papers that we have created during EVBRES are really highly cited. So it just shows that this is really relevant, and also the high quality of the work that has been done throughout the cost action. EVBRES has also had direct impact on research and education, resulting in a PhD course at HVL. The EBR training schools have been also used as part of PhD courses. You can see here a list of collaborations in many different countries, all directly resulting from this particular cost action, and even new research positions. So some of our members have directly benefited from the network that they have been exposed to, and of course we have benefited from attracting new talent to the relevant research. We've had a fabulous 4.5 years together. You can see some of it. A lot of it was conducted over dinners, but also a lot of hard work done. I think it was a really good balance between fun and a real, hands-on hard work. EVBRES has now ended, as we have seen. 4.5 years have come to an end, but of course the EBR journey carries on. So please do join us. Go to the EBR-Network.org website and sign up for our newsletter, and from then you will be able to receive the news about next steps, because of course there is still a lot of need for relevant research about evidence-based research, but also about solutions on how to tackle redundant research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Klara. It's really, when you listen to it, it's really overwhelming accomplishments with this EVBRES cost action, and so many collaborations, so many formal and informal collaborations, I guess. So now we would like to summarize the further plans and developments. So the information will come from the chairs of the working groups within EVBRES cost action. And it will also show how international the people were, because every person is from a different country. So I would like to welcome the leader of the working group 1, Eduard Baladia from Spain. Eduard will talk about the stakeholders of EBR and end users.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And we will talk about the work developed by Working Group 1 about dissemination and implementation. One of our objectives, general objectives, were to raise awareness and acceptance of the evidence-based approach and proposed solutions, and also to formulate implications of the evidence-based research approach across all the stakeholders, mainly researchers, medical journals, patients, ethics committee, and also funding agencies. And maybe we have to add another objective right now. So strictly collaborate with key stakeholders to develop and provide resources addressing specific needs to understand the evidence-based research approach, and also to let them apply. So that's the activity groups within the working group 1. Working about the ethics committee, research ethics committee, implications, funding agencies, medical journals, and patients and clinicians, Here you can see the leaders of every activity group. As Hans explained it, there are an ecosystem of the evidence-based research. There are some elements related to evidence-based research, and around this ecosystem, there are another ecosystems. So they are not only stakeholders, they have their own ecosystem. So the different stakeholders must to know what is evidence-based research, but also understand and accept this approach. They must to understand the applicability that have the evidence-based approach for them, and also have the ability to apply. And finally, they have to make changes to their own complex and interconnected ecosystems, ensuring that all changes are accepted by all involved in every ecosystem and adhered to. So we think that involving stakeholders and let them know what is and how can help the evidence-based approach contributes to improving the quality of research process. So also Hans explained it briefly, how evidence-based approach have an implication before and after a study has been conducted. And also we can place here the different stakeholders and ecosystem and their own ecosystems. And we must understand that different stakeholders have different window of opportunity and also maybe different kind of responsibility. Also, they must have different ways of understanding the evidence-based approach and different way to understand its applicability. And also, we will experience different barriers to make change in their own ecosystem. So, for example, from the research ethics committee's work done by this group of researchers, in which the leader was Simon Constall, and recently published this paper that thanks to this paper, now we know that the research ethics committee perceived the risk of different research approach. In some different risks are perceived for every different research methodology. So the research methodology impact how this ethics committee perceives the risk of research. And then now we know that different research methodologies imply different levels of efforts to justify it, for example, and that the evidence-based approach that we normally say that systematic reviews can be used to justify design maybe must to be adjusted according to this different research methodology. So this kind of research increases our knowledge about how stakeholders perceive evidence-based approach. And it has been detected thanks to the close work with these stakeholders. Another example conducted by Matt Westmore in the implication for funding agencies. As Klara also mentioned, the EBR-Network has been started to use the evidence-based approach, and they suggest how systematic reviews can be used in different stages of the funding process. So this kind of work also help us to understand how the evidence-based approach can be understood by different stakeholders. And as I mentioned, different windows of opportunity and responsibilities have different stakeholders have different windows of opportunities. Are not the same the funding agency or ethics committee that can stop or create some rules to fund a research and to start a research. But for example, for medical journals, they it seems that maybe they are in another part of the research process, in the final part, in the publication, and they maybe feel that have another responsibilities. Also, in this we have some examples. The research provided by Robert Peel about the implications for medical journals. Now, after a very good work and trying to rise to communicate with a lot of journals, 2,000 of journals are contacted, and now we know that it's difficult to approach medical journals. So it's also a learning of our process. We just have a 3.7% response rate. It's really a low response rate, only 51 answers. And in general, they feel that have some responsibilities in promoting the evidence-based research, but also perceived some barriers like lack of resource. And also, for example, we know that the editors think that reviewers cannot be expected to make a lot of efforts for the implementation of evidence-based research in the medical journals. So what are the learnings from the working group 1? We think that all activity groups are really important and must continue. As Klara says, the EBRES have ended, but the evidence-based research network starts or continue. Dissemination and implementation is not easy. It's challenging, time-consuming, and we need active efforts to implement the evidence-based research approach. We think that there will be a steady decline in each stage from the concept of the evidence-based research to the implementation of them. So all stakeholders must to be aware, accept them, see the applicability, also learn the ability to apply, act on, have an agreement within all the ecosystem, and finally adhere. And in every of these steps, there will be a decline in the process. So finally, from the working group 1, we think that we have to produce, as a next step, we have to produce evidence-based research materials to communicate effectively with every stakeholder. And then we have to highlight the specific evidence-based research approach relevance to these stakeholders, also to adapt the message to the technical knowledge of every stakeholder, and explain how to deal with known or emergent implementation barriers, and also to explain it without complexities, such success stories or something like that. So we have to work close with stakeholders to effectively communicate with them. Thank you very much. And if you need something about the working group 1, you have here my contact.
Thank you, Eduard. Thank you for a great summary. of how you approach the challenge, which was really a challenge just by looking at the low response rate and getting any information from the journals, for example. Thank you very much. So if there are any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end when we have the overall discussion. Thank you, Eduard. So I would like to invite now Miloslav Klugar to talk about the Working Group 2 Teaching Evidence-Based Research, which is also related to what Eduard was talking about. So building capacity, in fact, in the knowledge of EBR. Miloslav from Czech Republic this time.
Yes, thank you very much, Malgorzata, for introduction. Just to confirm, you see the slide in presenting mode. Okay, excellent. So thank you very much. It is a real pleasure to be here with all of you again after our beloved EBRES finished. But something finished, and now we have the EBR network. Actually, something where all of these started. So going back to this one, looking forward to new opportunities in the field. I'm very glad to, on behalf of the EBR and also EBRES Working Group 2, present you about our teaching, our training school, which was the evidence-based research. But before I start, here are a few of my disclosures. At the moment, I'm treasurer of the steering committee at Evidence-Based Research Network. I was a leader of Working Group 2, which in the activity A4 was responsible for the training school. There are a couple of other intellectual conflicts, but I don't have any direct or financial conflict of interest. Here is the Working Group 2 and members of the activity 4, which was actually training school. You see, based on the names as well, that there are colleagues all over Europe. You've seen from Klara their participation amongst the Europe and beyond, and that was great. It was reflected in this group. For the content of my presentation, I will go a bit on the introduction. However, it was almost said by Hans already, so I will be brief on this. Then tell you a bit about our methods, results, conclusions, and the way we look forward to the evidence-based research training school. So you already seen the goal of the evidence-based research, and the goal of the training school was actually to be able didactically and methodologically correctly to deliver this to our participants and to show how to be able to actually avoid wasteful and redundant research. You also seen this chart here, so I will just skip on this, but I will focus on this one. But actually, here you see our concept, and the training school was actually focusing on what you see on the left side. Yeah, so from the formulating of the question, searching for relevant reviews, assessing their quality, if they're up to date, refining, and then actually formulating the final research questions, informing the design of the new study, and justifying your research in ethical approval, funding applications, and then also placing new results into the context of existing evidence. So that was, in other words, aim of our training school, which we were actually designing and delivering together in that group. So a bit about our methods, how we started. Well, we started logically with the scoping exercise, which is very common for people who are in evidence-based, I would say, environment. We every time starting with it, looking for what exists, if you can build on something, and in the first place, if there exists any training school for evidence-based research. We didn't find any, but there were several different workshops, courses, trainings, quite plenty of. We were, focused on systematic reviews, evidence-based practice, evidence-based medicine, evidence-based healthcare, evidence-based, I would say whatever. So we took experience from, all of those courses which we reviewed. What was great in our group, I would say, was that we had very experienced colleagues who are professors at the universities of epidemiology and other relevant fields, let's say. And we have also colleagues who are novice in the field of the evidence-based research, but also evidence-based practice, for example. And it was good because we actually could use the diversity of the group to be able to shape well the training school. Altogether, we had 6 face-to-face meetings, which were long, usually at least 2 days, 4 STSMs and 8 online meetings, and a lot of the work in between and the task for the whole group. We use the content analysis and interactive discussions for our methods, and then the application procedure and selection criteria, pre-task, curriculum, program. We designed 14 modules. Evaluation from forms were actually designed as well. So that's a bit about the methods. About our participants, the course is targeted to either current investigators, but also senior clinical health researchers who are interested in how to perform evidence-based research. The learning objective is on successful completion of training school. Our participants are expected to have specific knowledge and skills related to evidence-based research. Here you can see quite a lot of the training objectives, what we actually designed by all these methods as I described. And all these learning objectives were in the end transformed into the 14 modules, what we actually developed as a complete training school. Interesting is to mention that we started our pilot training school focusing on the first 4 modules, and then based on the feedback evaluation and the progress, we added in the end actually it was 10 more modules we added for the final training school. Here you can see and read each of these modules and their content. First 8, and then here are the rest of those. Also finishing with the last one, which is looking for what are the challenges to EBR, how to face them, how to facilitate this change. Because as Eduard mentioned, we're working with all these relevant stakeholders and showing how to actually use and apply the EBR. Well, for the teaching methods, we were using and combining different approaches, didactical, different teaching styles and methods. So in the end, in terms of the lecturing, there is 12 hours of the lecturing. That is about 16 hours dedicated to the small group activities, independent learning, pre-task and pre-reading, about 8 hours, and course feedback was about 1 hour. We developed workbook for participants and also workbook for teachers and facilitators. Regarding this time is interesting because, for example, I implemented this in a teaching of the research methodology in our Master of Public Health program. And some students were able to actually finish it exactly as these hours. Some need a little bit more time. It depends on what is the experience of our colleagues who join the course, the experience with the evidence-based practice, I would say. So those who are more experienced, they can finish it faster. Those who are less experienced, it will take more time because they need to do a little bit more reading about some other basic concepts as well. However, we successfully tested that actually that could be really novice participants, or it could be very senior academicians, I would say, in different fields. So what are the results in here? We already heard from Klara about the number of registered participants. So we had more than 500. It ended up, we had 7 training schools, and we were affected by the COVID-19. So which in the end brought some very important experience for us, because we started as face-to-face. Then we were forced to move to synchronous online. Then we made a combination of asynchronous learning in a Moodle in the combination with a synchronous training school. Then we designed the asynchronous online complete in a Moodle. And then we switched from the Moodle to Canvas to make the asynchronous online. So our final product as a training school at the moment is an asynchronous online standalone course in a Canvas, which is still working still there. So that you can see our effort which was done, and which was actually partially motivated also by the COVID-19. And here of the evaluation of the training schools. So the training schools, more than 500 participants. evaluation form on certain aspects of the program. That's what we had. The feedback from teachers and facilitators, this is what we were collecting as well. And we were trying to improve every training school and reflect all the feedback. We also received the feedback from our program management group and also from the core group of the EBRES. So it was really the process in the end. Here are, as an example, are few questions we had to our participants. It was a scale from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree with the question. And here you can see on this scale, it's the scale only from 4.1 to 5. And we were all very glad that actually our training school was very well received and evaluated. Here you can see the question. So for example, one of the highest scores, almost 5, was that there was a collaborative and friendly atmosphere during the training schools. Also attending TS was valuable for me. Training school met my overall expectations. I found the overall aim of the TS has been reached, etc. So we received very, very good feedback. For the conclusion and what are the plans for the training school? Well, we can conclude that the training school was successful. The future of the training school, there could be, based on this experience, prepared as a face-to-face, synchronous online, asynchronous online. So all different possibilities are actually here for the teaching we have. For the future, we are thinking that it will be important to thematically focus to different target audiences, like ethical committees, research funders, journal editors, and the EBR is not limited only to health. So that's another huge field, which actually would be also going beyond the health borders to the social sciences, education, and anywhere else where actually the research is produced. Yeah, because that's where you can apply the evidence-based research approach. And also mention that that's the thematically focused outside the health. So thank you very much for attention. Before I thank you for listening, this is the slide I am presenting already last 4 years, I think, inviting everyone to Prague, where we're hosting the Global Evidence Summit. And it's important to mention in the context of Evidence-Based Research Network that the 9th of September, we are hosting the pre-conference as the Conference of Evidence-Based Research. So the 9th of September, there will be EBR conference. So, looking forward to see you all as in EBR, and then I hope that you will stay for the Global Evidence Summit as well. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Miloslav. Thank you. I think it also showed, thank you very much for the concise presentation of the so much effort put into the training school and so much time for discussions, etc. So it also showed that it is adjustable to different stakeholders, and that we are thinking, as Eduard mentioned, also for the materials, but we are also thinking in terms of teaching, about teaching different audiences. So now we have working group 3. We have Raluca Sfetcu from Romania this time, improving production, updating, and dissemination of systematic reviews.
Thank you, Malgorzata, for the introduction, and welcome everybody. It's good to see a mix of new participants and people who have already learned a little bit of what we've been doing in Working Group 3. I'm happy to give this overview on behalf of my group, although I must say I try to remain as concise as possible, and I haven't included too much detail. But I'm happy to answer after the presentation or by email if this is the case. Let me just see if I know how to move the slides. Okay, so this is the composition of our working group. As Klara already mentioned in the beginning, we've been a large working group with participants from all over Europe and beyond Europe. The working group has started under the leadership of Barbara Nussbaumer-Streit, who hopefully is going to come back to lead this working group activity and transition it into the new network. I've taken over from her for a little while, just giving her place. We had in our working group quite ambitious objectives. As you can see, the first one says that we wanted to describe the state of art of working processes and technologies that are used when preparing a systematic review, but also to identify how this could be improved. So this is quite a lot of ground to cover. not a task for the faint-hearted. On top of that, we also wanted to foster collaboration between systematic review specialists, librarians and information specialists, engineers, programmers, and other kind of stakeholder groups, just to see how we could actually work around these tools in order to make them better, so that they can help us increase the efficiency of upgrading and preparing systematic reviews. Although this might seem like quite overwhelming objective, we split them into activities and try to address them step by step. So the one of the activities, activity 8, dealt with looking at the actual resource use, like how much and how difficult is it currently to conduct systematic review and also update systematic review, so that we know where we need to do the improving of the efficiency. And this had 2 sub-projects, a scoping review conducted by Barbara and a qualitative study conducted by me. And activity 14 had focused more on looking at the solutions we have to speed up the process, like where can we actually still gain some efficiency in the process, either by improving the automation of some steps or by improving the methods and methodology around it. This is a scoping review led by Lisa and still work in progress. And the last activity tried to engage the community in order to do a prioritization, because many things could be done. And as you can imagine, we found a lot of areas for improvement from conducting the work in activities 8 and 14. And then we wanted to know how to prioritize what should happen first if we want to tackle this kind of big tasks of improving efficiency. So what we've learned from our work together, from the scoping review, which was already published in 2021 in June, and it's already cited more than 20, it has over 20 citations, which actually shows that a lot of people are interested in this work. We've learned that the steps that are more time consuming, because although there were studies looking at how many resources it takes to conduct a systematic review, most of them were around the time that it takes, but also not time in real life, but more in laboratory settings. So this is a secondary, let's say, finding, that we still don't have very precise measurement of the resource use, but with the information that we actually have, we discovered that one of the tasks that was overlooked, which is administration and project management, can actually take up a lot of time. The upper limit in a study was 209 hours per systematic review, which is quite considerable time to overlook if you don't take note of how much project meetings or team meeting might take, and just coordination with the other team members. Then other intensive steps in terms of resource use, and by this we mean time use, is the study selection, the data extraction, and the critical appraisal. The protocol development, the literature search, and study retrieval definitely take much less time, and they are not so resource intense when it comes to the time that it takes to fulfill the tasks. Then we looked also a little bit of why this is happening, like why these steps are more resource intense. And we discovered that the lack of experience and domain knowledge might make it more time consuming, as well as lack of collaborative and supportive software. But also good old communication and management, that if it's not working properly can actually quite increase the load on the systematic review process. from the second study that was published, which is the prioritization study, a Delphi method we used for that, we also discovered that data extraction is really high intensity step of the systematic review process, and it should be prioritized. Like systematic reviewers would actually like to see automation tools that would help them with these steps, because it's still really cumbersome, and it represents the largest part of the time spent conducting a systematic review. But also, and equally interesting, is the fact that automation cannot substitute all human input, although we put a lot of hope in this side. And there are tasks like grading of the studies that are still taking a lot of time because complex decisions are needed. And here we might not find so easily a solution by automatizing it, and we might still need to find perhaps other ways of improvement. One of the most frequently mentioned is training. Like with training, the grading becomes less time consuming. This can be a takeaway for us as a group. The other two projects that we undertook in this working group are still work in progress. One refers to the tools that we have, and they're available currently for improving the efficiency of systematic reviews. And we've done most of the work. We actually had to update the search in March, because from beginning to the draft writing in March, the search was already needed an update. And during the update, we identified 2,268 new references, which resulted in 21 additional study included in our review. And now we have 86 studies, and we still plan, it still took us a little while to go through the screening and data extraction and everything. So we still plan to do an update search in December before finalizing the draft and moving on to publishing stage. And for the qualitative study, where we had about 30 interviews with systematic reviewers and experts around the globe, actually literally all around the globe, we transcribed, we coded, we did most of the work. We're still at the rating stage, and we have a hard deadline end of December as well for this task. So this would kind of finalize the work that we targeted within the EVBRES. And of course, there's a lot of opportunity for the future, because as we all probably hear multiple times a day, artificial intelligence is here to stay, and why not use it for improving the efficiency of doing systematic review and supporting the evidence-based research movement across the globe. So for now, for this year, we still want to finalize the draft and publish the papers, but then for the next year, we're looking at how we can transition the work this working group has done into the EBR-Network, and discuss leadership. As I said, my role was a temporary one, and this is probably my final presentation in this role. And also together with the new leader, plan further activities around the use of artificial intelligence for increasing efficiency of systematic review. So this being said, thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or contact me via any channel. So let me just.
Thank you, Raluca. Thank you for an excellent presentation. So we are not having ChatGPT to do the reviews for us yet, I guess, right? Not yet.
Yes.
At least not the grading part.
Yes, definitely not yet, and we're still needed for a while.
Okay, that's a good message, right? Because you know, there is still some work to be done by us. Thank you. So now I would like to welcome Livia Puljak, who was the leader of Working Group 4 about the indicators of EBR and meta research. Welcome, Livia, from Croatia.
Thank you, everyone. Hello. It's a pleasure to see familiar faces. I would like to report what was happening with the Working Group 4 in the meantime. So the Working Group 4 was devoted to meta research. This group aimed to monitor the implementation of an EBR approach to see, how this could be done and how to proceed with monitoring. So it's not only important to use EBR approach, but to monitor over time whether and how it is implemented. So hereby I will present the further plans and developments on behalf of the Working Group 4. So what was happening in the meantime. So we have submitted a manuscript to the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology, in which we gathered a large international group of experts from the field of biomedical research methodology, and we wanted to get their ideas about methods for monitoring the implementation of EBR. So we submitted this manuscript to the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology, and we last week we got a minor revision decision. So I drafted the first the draft of the response, which is now under discussion among the co-authors. So we hope to be able to resubmit this shortly. And as David Pieper said, we hope that the acceptance of this paper will be our Christmas present. Yeah, and then we have several research studies ongoing or planned or waiting to be started. So in Bratislava at the meeting, we decided to do a study where we would like to discuss core outcomes for citation analysis in meta research, but we are waiting to wrap this study up, the one that is in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology under submission, because we would like to target the same individuals, the same experts to now address this second research tool. Then this year we had a meeting in Zagreb, Croatia, and during this meeting we did a lot of work and we opened some new ideas. So one of these ideas is now ongoing. So we would like to check the reporting checklists on the equator for the EBR content, and we still have some more studies lined up. So we would like to analyze the content of citing systematic reviews in high-end journals. So not just whether the systematic review was cited, but also how, the wording around it. And since we now have some ideas that we got from experts about EBR monitoring, we would like to do some further studies about stakeholders that were mentioned, because if some people from research methodology think that somebody should be in charge of EBR monitoring, we would like to hear the opinions of those people. What do they think about these ideas? Is this feasible? Is this realistic? Before we can proceed to implement such ideas. So this is very short about what we are doing currently and what we're planning in the future. So the group is still in touch and we're still collaborating, and it's been very nice to have this group to meet everyone within the COST EVBRES, and thanks everybody who has been participating so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Livia. Thank you for such a concise summary of so much work put into this Working Group 4. Thank you very much. So we have completed the information from the EVBRES cost action, and now is the time to talk about where we are going further. So we will transition this EVBRES cost action into, and how we imagine the further work will look like. And I would like to welcome Professor Karen Robinson to talk about the EBR-Network and further work. Karen, please.
Still not sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Good, good. Thank you very much. So I was asked to talk about evidence-based research network and further developments, but what I thought would be helpful is actually to provide a little bit of a historical context and also some of the things that the EBR network has been doing while EVBRES has been busy doing all the very impressive work that you've been doing. We'll start with a time frame, and as you heard from Hans and others, the EBR network started in December of 2014 here in Bergen, when a few of us got together and created the EBR network. This was an opinion piece that Ian Chalmers wrote in the Lancet to introduce the network. Here's a picture of that first group, Klara, where we're all there. And I wanted to point out that our initial, other people have provided the definition of evidence-based research, but I wanted to point out that our initial principles, there were two: no new research studies without prior systematic review of existing evidence, and efficient production, updating, and accessibility of systematic reviews. We can't require the first one if we can't help with the second one. So then the EBR network members, we realized we needed some funding. We need also some collaborators, and we submitted several applications, and were thankfully successful in getting the cost action, which, as you've heard again, was fabulous. Got lots and lots done. Here's a picture from Bergen of 2019. And you were all busy doing the work with EVBRES, but other members of the EBR network, so who were maybe tangentially related to EVBRES, because EVBRES, of course, was focused in the European Union, we're still busy doing the work of promoting evidence-based research and trying to keep the EBR network sort of moving forward. So as an example, in 2018, a number of us got together in Toronto and developed a framework to provide for conducting research and evidence-based research. And we've had several iterations since then, not all in Toronto. And in fact, the most recent iteration was done a few days ago here in Bergen. And the framework now is composed of 3 different sections. So the first section is focused on meta research in evidence-based research. So setting the context for why EBR is important, what are some of the consequences of not following an EBR approach, really setting the stage to help us monitor the problem and whether it improves at all. The second sort of chunk of aims is around developing EBR. So research related to how should we use evidence systematically, how should we use end user perspective systematically, and was just touched on recently, research around the efficient production of systematic reviews using automation, for example. And then finally, the third list, a chunk of aims is around implementing evidence-based research, thinking about how we might identify barriers or facilitators and how to overcome those, and how to think about evaluating the implementation of evidence-based research. So we've been working on the agenda, and we've also, as others have pointed out, we've been still publishing as part of the EBR network. This is the JCE series on evidence-based research. So then we're going to jump forward a little bit. So in 2021 was the second EBR conference. I can't read the slides anymore. And in 2022, a couple of things happened. We had a meeting called the Continuation of EVBRES, where we introduced the concept of looking forward to continuing the hard work and important work of EVBRES into EBR-Network. And that was followed in October of the same year, 2022, with the first General Assembly for the EBR-Network. At that first General Assembly, the members of EVBRES and current members of the EBR network endorse what we've been calling the founding steering committee, which is a little confusing to me since we were actually founded in 2014, but that's okay. We'll keep with that name. And here you see the founding steering committee. Caroline, some of you have heard from, obviously, Caroline, Klara, Miloslav, Hans, Mona, myself, and Jennifer. The steering committee's been, again, very busy, so dealing with the research agenda, but also trying to formalize the EBR network more as a formal not-for-profit organization. Again, trying to think of sustainability and developing EBR in a bigger way. So one of the things that we did was develop a draft strategy that was endorsed at that first General Assembly. So the strategy includes a few things. It includes an overall vision. So the overall kind of big picture vision is a world in which the cultural norm and expectation is that decisions about research are based on transparent and systematic use of evidence. The mission then is a transparent and systematic use of evidence to inform decisions about research. So that's the vision and mission. And then I won't go through all of these, but we had 4 goals for the EBR network, along with objectives that would help us meet those goals. So I'll just show them here, and then if you can get access to the slides. The other thing in terms of formalizing the EBR network was developing a charter. Special shout out to Jenny and Klara for their hard work on that. There's 3 main sections of the charter. So there's general information about the EBR network, that is not for profit, or the purpose of the network. And then also that we are in collaboration with HVL. We will soon have a signed agreement about that. The charter also includes the governance structure. So there's some specific details we need to be not for profit, like have a board of trustees, but it also outlines the election of the steering committee, the composition of the steering committee, and subcommittees that will move forward with the EBR network work. And then key policies around membership, elections, changes to the strategy, etc. The third document, the EBR network founding steering committee has been working on, is the business model. This outlines financial administrative details, but also outlines our thoughts around how we might be able to sustain ourselves in terms of resources. So a membership fee structure, so a membership fee, and then different fees or lower fees for people from low and middle income countries, or young investigators, or students. Grants that we may seek for the work that we're doing, sponsorships such as for conferences, revenue from products like the training school, for example, and which would be nice, donations, that would be nice. So setting ourselves up to allow for that to happen in a practical way. So that was December, that was 2022, October 2022, December 2023, we're here. And then in September of 2024, you heard about it a little bit with Miloslav, we're going to have the EBR conference, but we're also going to have the second General Assembly. And at that second General Assembly, we'll have the formal election of a steering group. So we would like to encourage you to join the EBR network. Why should you join the EBR network? Well, you continue to support the promotion of EBR. You will receive a discount for EBR conferences, training schools, etc. You will have the opportunity to participate in the development and discussion around EBR, as well as in research related to EBR. So you've heard some of that research, and again, the research agenda that we have set out. So we would encourage you to join the such as at EBR-Network.org. I'm not sure why it's cut off. So please sign up for the EBR Network newsletter. And then just finally, or second to finally, I guess, please come, as Miloslav said, to the 4th EBR conference, the 2nd General Assembly. It'll be held on the 9th of September, so immediately before the Global Evidence Summit, and there are the links to that. So in terms of the future, there's some formal things that we're moving forward with the EBR network, including the election of the steering committee in September. And we are continuing to work on the charter and governance issues. And then the other piece of the future for EBR is, you know, the EVBRES and the EBR network has been focused on clinical research, on health research. And we feel that we need really to move beyond healthcare. And that's why we're particularly excited about tomorrow's session, where we will focus on social science. And specifically, the question that we've asked the speakers to think about is, when is enough enough? We've been talking about that in the EBR network for a while, but in terms of, from the concept or perspective of social science, when is replication too much or too little? And we hope you join us tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I would like to thank all the speakers for their concise summaries. And I would like to welcome the questions now in the chat or in the question and answers. Maybe I can start by asking how to sign up for the EBR network, Karen, formally. How to do it formally to sign up for to become a member of EBR network.
Yes, so right now what I would do is go to the EBR-Network.org site and sign up for the newsletter. And we hope to very soon, in the spring, I would think would be the realistic, optimistic suggestion. We will be we're trying to nail down a membership platform so that it allows us to organize and manage the membership and be able to take money, the membership fees from different denominations or currency. So please join the newsletter so then you will be notified of the membership starting up, we hope, in the spring. And then we can learn about the membership fee as well, right? Because I understand yes, it's not known now. I don't think we've come to agreement on that. We hope it won't be onerous, but enough that it helps the EBR network move forward financially. And the last question regarding to this, so everybody's on the same page. So I understand that voting will be allowed in Prague. Voting will be allowed for those who are signed up as members. Yes, correct. Okay. Are there any questions? Other questions? Okay, so I guess that's the role of facilitator to also ask the questions. So maybe I can ask Eduard whether there are any further plans for collaborations, because Raluca already set up, Livia also told us what are the plans for further work within those people who were collaborating as working groups 3 and 4. What about working group 1? Are there any further plans for collaborations, for developing any studies or materials or anything?
So right now we are having some meetings to just define these collaborations. We're not yet preparing the materials. We're still discussing the framework to be used, and also the objectives with each stakeholders, and to create actions to be taken. So many questions arise in this meeting, in these initial meetings, like how to approach each stakeholder, who to work with local and small stakeholders, or maybe international and big for example, in journals, high impact journals, or maybe small and local journals that we can approach better. And there are a lot of questions to answer before we can start to say which is the next step to firmly say it. We think we have to develop slightly different process for each stakeholders. That's our feeling. And just we need to organize ourselves and to think about, and then maybe we can say which is the next step. But if any of the people that are here have any idea, it will be welcome in these meetings.
Thank you.
Can I just add one general thing? Sorry. I think one of the things that we would like to say from the steering group perspective is that we would very much like the work group the important work to continue. And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is how best to support that work and integrate the EVBRES people with the EBR-Network people and move that forward.
Thank you, Karen. I think that's very important because I guess many people would like to still be involved, but not sure about the fees or other issues. So I can see the hand from Miloslav.
Yeah. Thank you, Malgorzata. I think I can echo exactly what Karen mentioned for this, but going directly to Eduard and what he mentioned. As promoting the Global Event Summit, I attended a lot of the conferences, most of the partners conferences, which are Cochrane, GPI, Campbell, GIN, and especially in the last conference, it was a GIN Ignite. It was focused a lot about the reporting guidelines and about the peer review as well. And all of the keynote speakers there agreed that the publication system at the moment is a bit sick, and needs some treatment. I see here a huge opportunity for an EBR approach, towards this, working with journal editors, with the publishers, ethical committee. So that would be the huge fun. One of the questions about how actually are peer reviewers trained, and it was David Moher as one of the keynote who actually brought data about what was published actually within this open servers prior publications. So after the peer review, the data and results were not changed. So the question is how important actually there was the peer review, and then it elaborated a lot of discussion about actually if the peer review, as at the moment we know it, is able to actually identify fraudulent or fabricated data, etc., which we kind of agreed that probably not. So I think there is a lot of work within this, and a lot of relevant work for a working group, for a former working group 1, I would say. And I'm mentioning just one part, because it's much broader. Then the same can speak about the ethical committees and the founders. But per se for the scientific journals, that was it. And the data was the comparison about what was published in the preprint servers, and then actually in a final publication, the conclusions didn't change, which was for me very surprising.
Thank you, Miloslav. I think that that's very important, but also I see Klara raising hand. Just I wanted to, because Eduard showed a slide stating that peer reviewers do not have time to spend on the making sure that there is EBR. Was it Eduard? Yes, that EBR approach is used. But then, what is the role of peer reviewers then? That's in line with what Miloslav was saying. Klara, please.
Thank you, Malgorzata. I was just thinking that, there is a lot of work of what EBRES has been doing is to establish what is the current situation of, you know, how large is this problem of research waste resulting from not conducting research in an evidence-based research way, or applying the EBR approach to it. And we see it as a real continuum from where we stand at the moment and to reaching a state further down the line when all new studies are conducted in an EBR manner. And in between, there may be stages such as, you know, we want to make it really easy to do it, easy to know how to do it. And this is where the work of the training schools has been so incredibly important, to build that capacity and that understanding. And then at the later stage, maybe make it really difficult not to do it. And then at the very end, make it basically impossible not to do it. So I think I see this really as a long-term road, and I think it makes it really complex in that way that there are so many different stakeholders involved. And at this stage where we are, each of them tries to push the hard work onto the others. It's sort of a bit what I've seen, at least in the publishing and editorial environment, where I have sort of talked to several people that they wish, you know, somebody else would take care of it, and so they didn't really have to do much themselves. It is difficult to do it, but I think each of these key stakeholders has to become really aware of their responsibility, know exactly at what stage in the process their responsibility lies, and then take the relevant action. So a lot still needs to be done, but I think everybody has to do their part and not just expect from the others to make it magically happen.
Thank you, Klara. Yeah, I agree that this should be like shared responsibility for many different stakeholders. But Miloslav, do you see an option of creating training schools specific for those stakeholders Eduard mentioned, right? Because we have many different people, many different stakeholders. Shall we have like specific training schools for each of those audiences?
Thank you, Malgorzata. Definitely, yes. Right. I mean, that's what our plan, and we are able to adapt the current content for basically any needs. Yeah. So what we developed is kind of the core, I would say, and then of course it would be, we may slightly adapt it to the particular needs for, you know, as the journal editors, journalists, peer reviewers, ethical committees, founders. So basically all relevant stakeholders for EBR. So Malgorzata, you are muted.
Yeah. So thank you, Miloslav. I could imagine that peer reviewers could have like obligatory training before becoming peer reviewers, for example, like at least short training school to learn about the steps. That could be an option.
Exactly, because, you know, one of the questions we were discussing is actually, who of us had the former training as a peer reviewer? Yeah, and, you know, speaking about this, you know, the EBR training school will be really relevant, you know, for this, you know, by many, you know, many modules would be actually relevant for peer reviewers, or making them better peer reviewers, I would say. Yeah, and in that room, we were discussing it on a GBI Ignite. There were just few people who actually received some formal training as the peer reviewers. And I believe that, you know, if we ask this question here, we probably won't see much difference, unless those who already, you know, attended the EBR training school, which I hope are few people who are already in here.
Thank you. Karen, and then we have a question from the audience. Karen, please.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I was just going to echo what Klara says. We have to figure out how to make it easy, then desirable, and then maybe mandatory. But speaking of the peer reviewers, I think many of us would think that's too late in the process. We do certainly need to help educate peer reviewers. I think that's a good idea, but we need to think about where in the process is the best place to target promoting or implementing EBR, because when you're at the stage of publishing your paper, that's probably too late.
I mean, I would say that's never too late for education, but I agree that maybe too late for EBR approach. Yes. Yeah. So now we have a question from Pavel Zelnov. What are your perspectives on international cross-organizational collaboration in the field of evidence-based health research, specifically on methodology and governance issues? Example with the James Lind Alliance in the UK, Joanna Briggs Institute in Australia, Epistemonikos in Chile, WHO, EVBRES, etc. I guess that's the question for EBR-Network. So then Karen, Hans, or Klara.
Yeah, I was actually going to say this earlier, that one of the things that as a network we can do is collaborate with other networks and organizations. Thinking of it, I was thinking of it in relation to the automation, because it just occurred to me that I've joined with a different hat on. I've joined an international group trying to develop guidance for how to evaluate language models. So it seems to me that those are examples where we would like the EBR network to have a sort of seat at the table and to collaborate with other organizations that have similar mandates or purposes.
Thank you. I can see Miloslav has his hand up.
Yeah, I think Pavel, excellent question and comment for it. We hold the session within the GBI directors actually discussing exactly this. I was one of the panelists on this session, as we already collaborate with several entities under one roof, and there were several other colleagues who do the same. And yeah, I was talking there about the evidence-based research network and how we see it fits. I mean, the collaboration is already going on, yeah, as there are many colleagues in EVBRES and now EBRN actually are already from the different organizations. We share the knowledge that, for example, some of the knowledge for our training school we use from the GBI, Cochrane, Trade, and other, with, of course, with the permission of those organizations. And on the Global Evidence Summit, we'll be seeking for joint methodological workshops who will be, across several different organizations. And the EBR fits very well, in this process because, building already on existing, ideally systematic reviews, in justifying new studies, then in placing them into the context. So it's exactly fitting the role. And I think that it was probably not showed today, but Hans designed one of the slides showing within the ecosystem where the EBR and actually fits within this ecosystem, actually collaborating with all. And I believe there were already, if not formal agreement, at least discussion. So the other organizations know about the EBRN, and we are already effectively, I would say, using the knowledge and products and systematic reviews from other organizations who are in the field.
Thank you, Miloslav. Klara.
Thank you. And this ties back a bit to the presentation about that Karen was giving about the funding or business models that have been worked on as part of the founding steering committee of the EBR network. In terms of identifying income streams for the EBR network in order to continue with this very ambitious plan of action going forward in terms of its collaborations, in terms of the research that is planned, and potentially other activities. And one particular area that we were looking at ties back into the tailored training schools, for example, for the different stakeholder groups. So as the awareness of the problem increases, and also the recognition that something has to be done about it, so people are starting to say, okay, we want to take responsibility here, we want to know how best to approach this. that there might be a need for tailored training programs, educational programs, working together with particular funders, ethics committees, potentially with other organizations within the entire research ecosystem on applying EBR methodologies and approach to their particular circumstances, to identify whether there's a problem with how they have been doing research this far, and how to do it in a different way, avoiding research waste as much as possible going forward. So I think it's really an interesting area that we want to explore over the next year or two.
Thank you, Klara. May I bring to the attention of all the panelists the question regarding how to reduce research waste with systematic reviews? Because now they are so trendy that we have so many systematic reviews that we have more than one answering the same question.
Or we have papers that are called systematic reviews that are not. Yeah.
So is there any way to make them more systematic? I mean,
well, yeah, I do. So this is a tricky. Yeah, we could have one of these sessions on this question, right? So one of the things we know, I think it was the last EBR conference, Leslie Stewart from Prospero presented, and she said that they are developing, I haven't looked to see if it's actually been made live, a process where if somebody is entering their title to register, it'll search the database and say, whoa, there's this other systematic review that's the same thing. Are you sure you want to proceed? And then I don't remember if there was if they prohibited you from proceeding, but there's at least that way to identify duplication. But I do think it's a big issue. Yeah.
And there's a lot of attention to it in the evidence-based environment or community. People are very interested and engaged in it. And as I see it, I think that this redundancy may come from the same reasons as for the original studies or the primary studies. I think that's the same problem related to it, that you are thinking that you are maybe the first who are doing this and it's important for you, or there are some benefit, or you can maybe have more citations and stuff like that. So I think the EBR approach is just as relevant for systematic reviews as for any other kind of research publications.
Miloslav, thank you, Hans.
Yeah, again, I'll give a favor to Raluca or Eduard if they would like to, but since not yet. So for me, I mean, this is the very complex question, yeah, and many experiences. One of the recent in my head is actually that we were supporting one of our national guidelines for diabetic food ulceration, and for one particular question, which was effectiveness of the hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment for diabetic food ulcers, we identified more systematic reviews than randomized control trials. For the topic, several actually being already registered or published in one of the quite known journal as a protocol already. And this is really the issue. Don't speaking about that some pretending to be systematic reviews which are not, which is rather even confusing our colleagues, let's say, in academia. So no, I think this is the huge role for us as the EBR network, because we can't make the system better focusing just on one group, as already I think Klara said, because we need to start with the individual junior and senior researchers, I would say, ethical committees, editorial boards, because they all, and also the founders, right? Because each of them, they should stop this, right? First of all, me as an individual researcher, I should do proper search for registered systematic or scoping reviews. and I should stop it there. You know, if not me, then it should be perhaps my supervisor, yeah, or senior researcher. If not then perhaps the founder, and then in the last instance, the editors and the journals. So, you know, it's kind of all our relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, thank you, Miloslav. Yeah, I can see that Karen is raising hands, so please.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I think one of the things this reminds me is what Eduard presented, and that, you know, there's different levels of ethical risk and resource risk for different kinds of studies, including systematic reviews. I mean, so the redundancy is a potential resource waste and can add to confusion, but there's obviously, we're not randomizing people to a treatment that doesn't work, for example. So the ethical concern isn't as great. So maybe we need to think, as Eduard, what he presented showed, maybe we need to think about different messaging and different ways to think about implementing EBR with different study designs, including systematic reviews.
Thank you, Karen. And the possibilities for automation, Raluca?
I was actually thinking that Karen's comment was leading to exactly what I had in mind to contribute to this discussion, because she was discussing about the resource use that is also high and intensive in systematic reviews. But I think from our work in the working group 3, people would not necessarily engage into doing this kind of work, even if the ethical risk is not that high, if there would be more trust and a little bit less fragmentation between professional groups. So this leads back to Miloslav comment saying that we as an EBR network have a great role in bringing people together around the table, because many times perhaps there's not enough trust in the standards of another organizational group that's conducted the systematic review and the expertise, and then to make it easy and bring everybody at the same level and increase the level of trust of the community in the work of the colleagues that are working in the same space, or somehow having methods for developing reusable resources, not one time usable resources. And this is where all the discussion about repositories that can be established at different level of aggregation for the information, I think it's becoming more relevant and important. And also interoperability between different methodologies and database and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Raluca. I can see Hans increasing.
You know, it was a very good question, and the presentation from the different working group was also indicating that there is so much work to do. So there is only one solution. That's we have more members in the EBR network. So you can see there's really a need for someone who can help us in changing things and improving and promoting and developing the approach, and for example finding what is the real issue when it comes to systematic review, what is the real issue when you're doing a qualitative study, what if you're doing social science compared to natural science. And that's something we in the future are hoping that we can work more with, but we need more people. So please do not hesitate. Sign up for the newsletter and you will be informed further. Yes.
Thank you, Hans. So any other issues or questions? Because we can go on regarding systematic reviews, but I guess that's not necessarily interesting for everybody here. So if there are no additional questions, I think we can wrap up this session. So I would like to thank again to all those who spoke on behalf of EVBRES, Evidence-Based Research Network. And I would like to encourage, I have one hand, Mark Brown. I don't know how to make Mark Brown speak.
I try.
Mark Brown just raised his hand.
You wanna let him talk? Yeah.
Okay.
It's up there. Yeah. So you should let him talk.
Okay, but we did it. Okay.
Now you can talk. Ask your question, please.
You're being
Okay, seems like I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that's a real question. Okay, I guess we've been hacked probably.
I was like,
Can you just remind everybody about tomorrow's session?
Yes, I just wanted to do it. So I would like to invite everybody for tomorrow's session to talk about the other fields. So replication in social science, too much and or too little. We will have two speakers from social sciences and the discussion panel. So we are hosting Hugh Waddington from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, which Karen showed on her slides, and Vivian Wong from Replication Collaboratory Lab at the University of Virginia. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, using the same Zoom link, I would like to invite everybody who participated today for tomorrow's session. And of course, I would like to invite everybody for next year, 9th of September, just before Global Evidence Summit, and of course to attend Global Evidence Summit in Prague too. I would like to thank everybody, and that's all from us for now. So thank you and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Shall we talk about tomorrow?
I have to.
Nice.
Now we can look.
Nice.
Now we can talk.
Nice job sharing. Did a very nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. And I noticed that there was at some time there were 38 participants.
Yeah. Although many more registered, but they didn't
but that's
attend.
typical.
Yeah. Just it's still recording, just for you to know, and there are still 4 people.